doubt, out of touch with who they really are. But the Flow Freaks podcast uncovers how to overcome all of those things and thrive in times of chaos. Welcome to the Flow Freaks podcast, a deep dive into what it takes to become the super version of ourselves and live a life that's true and authentic to ourselves. I'm your host, Gemini Cruz. Let's get it. Many people feel stuck, stressed.
All right, so I'm going to have to make sure that when I do the live streams and I have any like audio and video, that clearly I hardwire right into my laptop, because obviously just trying to do that music intro was kind of cutting up and stuff. So that's weird. I'll definitely have to fix that and change that. But I kind of wanted to do another one of these for you guys. I've had a lot of people ask me about flow and all the research that I've been able to look into, read over, and all the training and stuff that I've gotten from a lot of really amazing people, really intelligent people who are leading the field in flow and optimal performance, peak performance, productivity, and all the aspects that go into that. So kind of wanted to just do another one of these just to, get this information out there and also practice more on talking about the subject and all the aspects that go into flow and living a high flow lifestyle, optimal human functioning performance, however you want to word it. And I know there's a lot of there's peak experiences, and then there's peak performance, and a peak experience is different from peak performance and flow, and people get those things confused, which I won't really get into right now, but that's something to keep in mind and consider. But I kind of want to I'm going to share this here, and I actually want to see if this is all right. Cool. So we're sharing here. All right, cool. So flow and peak performance. I got some slides here. This is a presentation that I'm working on, and these are a lot of the things that I want to go over and talk about, which I won't do here. Rather, all of this stuff is going to go more so into my peak performance, flow and peak performance masterclass and speech that I'm working on, and all that fun stuff. So anyways, I'm going to just check here really quick. I want to just make sure this is working. Cool. Perfect. All right. So, all that fun stuff. So anyways, all right. I'm going to just close that out. So some of the aspects that I want to kind of go into, which I find interesting, is Nietzsche and his Superman theory. Also, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, he's an American psychologist who has done one of the, if not the biggest global research study on flow and happiness, which is really interesting. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi also is he's the godfather of flow, and also the co-founder of positive psychology, which we will get into just a little bit later, because I really, really, really want to make sure that everybody that's interested in this subject understands the importance of not just flow, but what it takes to continuously be able to trigger that state of consciousness. And positive psychology is it's the main foundation of well-being in our lives, and it encompasses everything that it takes, that we need as humans to have everything that we need to thrive, especially in today's world that's so chaotic and there's just so much going on. So that's something that for me really stood out when I got into learning about flow and the aspects of living a high flow lifestyle. So it's interesting. There's a quote from Nietzsche that Superman is an individual who has surpassed both the Christian morals and values of humanity and transcends pure rationality. Superman is beyond good and evil in that he recognizes that morality only exists concerning human beings. He can create his values through his actions. I thought just seeing that quote really stood out for me, especially him just talking about saying Superman in general and how we can transcend ourselves and overcome obstacles, and how really important that is, and taking action, right? And we can create our values through our actions. I think that's really important. This is a quote from Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and he says, "The best moments in our lives are not the passive, receptive, relaxing times. The best moments usually occur if a person's body or mind is stretched to its limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile." I actually have, I won't bring it, I have over here one of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's books, and essentially the book is all of his research condensed. I don't want to say condensed, all of his research and studies all into one book, essentially. And I really want to just make sure you guys understand that voluntary is so important. Like it kind of aligns with intention. So not forcing yourself to do something just because you have to do it. That's going to produce a different outcome, literally, and also it's going to also have a different physiological effect in your body, your mindset. So, for instance, it's easy to, let's say, like, force yourself to go to the gym, right? You don't really want to be there, but you're doing it just because you have to, right, to get the result that you want, right? Well, it's different when you change that and shift it into a voluntary, I want to go to the gym, and here's why. And this is, like, if you value hard work, I've had people, they come to me and they want fitness help, and okay, what do you value? What's important to you? And I actually had one person like a year ago, and she was like, "Why are you asking me these questions?" And I'm like, "Well, have you never been asked these questions before?" And she's like, "No, what does it matter?" Well, it does matter, because your values are how you build the foundation of your life, and what's really meaningful and important to you can be very different from what's meaningful and important from somebody else. And if I were to be your coach, your trainer in this fitness journey, I need to know these things, because I need to know what's important to you and what drives you and what matters most to you. And voluntary effort is so insanely important, and your values need to align with the effort, right? So if somebody says, "Oh, I value hard work," okay, well, are you working hard on, let's say, your fitness goals that you're coming to me to reach? And if this person says no, well, now they see a disconnect. I'm not telling them, "Hey, you aren't working hard." I'm showing them the mirror and saying, "Hey, you value hard work. That's awesome. I think that's something that we should all value, right? That's an important aspect of, self-mastery, of getting good at a skill, being good at your job, being a good parent, a mother, father, being a good human being, right? Like hard work, it does matter. It does have its place in the equation. So I'm not going to stick here for too long, but I really just want to get the importance, how I want you guys to understand how important it is that voluntary effort is insanely important. It's shown in his studies. When I was reading his stuff, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi stuff, that I noticed a pattern of when he mentioned voluntary, things changed, and not just like a little bit, like drastically. So if you're struggling with whatever particular goal or outcome, understand what your values are, and then try to link and see the disparities and the gaps of your values and your actual actions, and understand, like, oh, well, if I value this and I'm not actually, my actions aren't showing that I value that, then you can question, do I really value this? Or, okay, well, I need to really show that that's my value through my actions. Let's move along here. What is flow? Interesting. I love this question. People are like, what is flow? And what does it matter? Well, flow is an altered state of consciousness when we are at our very best. And interesting enough, for the longest time, I think people still say this, that, oh, we only use 10% of our brain. If we could only use more, we would be that much more smarter, intelligent, whatever, right? Well, what they've found in flow is that, so you've got different aspects of your brain, different networks, right? Well, one aspect of your brain is the prefrontal cortex, right? And this has like executive attention. So your ego lives in your prefrontal cortex, planning ahead for the future, self-criticism, self-rumination. These things are where they're inside of your prefrontal cortex. This is their home, right? So in flow, you're at your very best, right? But they found that structures of your prefrontal cortex are shutting down. Now, with the fMRI stuff, it's like really noisy, so it's hard to like really kind of see where things are happening, like who, what, when, where, why stuff. But there's a lot of research that's been done and shown that they found that there are structures in the prefrontal cortex that are shutting down. And this is really cool because in flow, there's things that you really want to optimize, because when you're in the moment, you're not really thinking. You are the thing you're doing. You've integrated with whatever you're doing. So if you're playing an instrument, if you're writing music, if you're riding your bike, if you're driving to work, have you ever like just driven to work? You're just driving and you kind of don't even remember like the drive. It just went away. You could consider that a micro flow state, right? You were just in the moment. The default mode network kind of kicked in, and your brain just took you there, and that was it, right? So you could consider that a micro flow, or like maybe you're playing with your kids, or maybe you're out in nature. There's a lot of flow triggers in nature. We'll kind of get into the flow triggers, but essentially, I know what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi describes flow as is when the participant, the person, merges with the activity or the thing that they're doing in the moment, when challenge meets skill at that particular skill level. So I really want to drive this home. Another point that you need to understand your current skill level and stretch yourself just enough. I think Google has I think it's a 3 to 5% rule. Obviously, stress and challenge does matter. If you are more introverted, an ambivert, or an extrovert, somebody like me, I can tolerate way more stress and challenge. But the downside of that is that I'm more prone to set myself up for a lot more frustration, because I will set my goal or a task or a challenge so hard that I kind of at some point just like burn out, and it's just too much, right? So I've had to like learn how to understand where like my anxiety levels are, of like, okay, here's the big goal, right? Okay, well, if this goal is freaking me out, let me break that down. And what's the next step? What's the step to get there? If I'm still freaked out, I'm going to break that one down, and I'm going to keep breaking things down until that stress and anxiety kind of almost goes away, but you want just enough to keep you in the game, because the problem is you want that frustration, which is the first level in flow. So you want that norepinephrine, you want that cortisol to keep you alert, right? Sympathetic, alert, focus, urgent, important, danger. Essentially, your body is like, danger, this is important, alert, focus, attention, right? And now you are in a better place to receive more information and see patterns and things like that, which that's the first step of flow. So anyways, kind of going into flow triggers, but essentially knowing your challenge skill level, like that's a very important flow trigger. And I use this when I'm practicing drums. I actually I stress myself out maximum, right? And we're kind of getting into like flow cycle education here, where stage one is frustration, is struggle. So whenever you're feeling frustrated, whenever you're struggling with a task or whatever it is you're doing or experiencing, that's a sign to keep going because you're on the track to flow. And for me, when I'm, let's say, rehearsing drums, I actually have a book and I'm playing 3 limbs at once, and then I'm reading a chart on my 4th limb against the other limbs. I'm playing to a click, and I'm also singing a limb. So I might boom, 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 right? To really internalize that limb, but then I'm going to go back and I'm going to sing my right hand. I'm going to sing my left hand. I'm going to sing my left foot, and then I'm going to sing the quarter note. 1, 2, 3, 4, while I'm reading the chart and playing 3 limbs against the other limb, right? Whatever the book is telling me to do. And that really, especially if I'm doing like a new system with a new reading, I have to coordinate. I have to slow things down, especially once you get like proficient at something, you're kind of used to already moving and, just kind of doing things and making it's easy because you've been doing it for so long. So that's where the challenge comes in to get that stress and cortisol up and get you really alert, focused, and attentive. So, but then again, like I said, you don't want to have the challenge too much that you break. You want to have, or too little that you're bored. And I think I have a slide on the actual, I do not. I know I have it somewhere. I have it in another slide. I'm going to have to put that slide into the presentation because that's an important one. But the flow channel essentially is, and this is actually in Mihai's book, Flow. He talks about it. You want to be in the flow channel, right? Excuse me. So you want to have enough stimulation with whatever that stimulation is with what you're doing or experiencing, right? You want to have it where you're in the flow channel, right? But you don't want to have too much stimulation that you're overwhelmed or anxiety, but you also don't want to have too little or you're in boredom, apathetic, right? Excuse me. So that's really important for you to understand, because at the end of the day, you don't want to feel overwhelmed. You don't want to feel anxiety, which you can look at a lot of lifestyles and how people are living and feeling. And I actually felt this almost 2 months ago, where I was drinking, and obviously I don't suggest to do this, but I was drinking like 400 to 600 milligrams caffeine. Things were just really weird, and work was weird. It's kind of it was a weird time, and I had to make changes. So that being said, I was in the overwhelm. I got into the anxiety realm because of a lot of different factors that fall into positive psychology, which we'll get into. But now I'm just rambling on about that first stage. But if you go, let's say you're in stage 1, you're frustrated, you're maximizing your struggle phase. You have to learn, like, this whole process is self-awareness. So at the end of the day, you really want to build your intuition and self-awareness, and the only way that you can do that is by practicing, reflecting, by journaling. I was just talking to my guitarist last night, and I was like, I really I've fallen off a little bit on meditation because I was going so hardcore with it. Excuse me. And I haven't been journaling like I used to. And I got this cool journal. I finished my journal up, and I got this other journal, and I don't like it because the papers, it's like for kids. So I haven't been using it. So I need to buy a new journal. But journaling is really cool because it's like a brain dump. I know, a lot of people, they photo dump and they get all those things off their phone. They restart their phone. Well, you need to restart yourself, your brain, your body. And a good brain dump technique that I've learned is journaling. Now, imagine you're on your computer and you have all these tabs open, right? And you have all this software running and all this stuff open. Well, if you look at your computer's processing power and everything, you're going to see that, even though maybe you have it minimized and it's in the background, the computer is still processing that and it's using power for that. So when you associate that to your brain, all of your thoughts and feelings and everything you're experiencing, those are taking cognitive load. So what you want to do to reduce cognitive load is you want to start journaling every day. You want to take those tabs and close them. You don't want to just have billions of tabs open and software running, especially if you're not using them. And the cool thing about journaling is, one, you cannot journal 100% mandatory. You cannot journal on your laptop or on electronics on your phone. You have to pen to paper because your brain works differently when you are writing on paper. It's literally like you're physically taking it from your brain through your hand onto the paper. It's really weird. I haven't really done a lot of my own personal research on it. I just know from years of experience of journaling and filling up journals that it really works after about 3 to 4 days. I guess depending on the person and how much you're writing, it makes a huge difference. So, and then you learn too, like, it doesn't, in the beginning, it might be hard and feel weird to journal, but it doesn't matter what you're writing. If you need to write the F word for, a whole page, then just do it, right? Because you're building the skill and the habit of learning, of writing and just getting things out of your head. And once you really start going with this, you're going to realize that your brain is so clear that you have nothing to write about. And you're like, I don't know what to write. So I think for a lot of people, if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling anxiety, journaling is a big tool to kind of just really get everything out of your head. Now, which is cool because if you go from frustration, stage 1 of flow, to stage 2 of flow, you're now in release phase. So, once you get stage 1 of flow done, which is stress, cortisol, norepinephrine, you stress yourself out, that self-awareness of knowing how much stress and frustration you can tolerate, then you back off and you go into a release phase, which is where nitric oxide, is it nitric oxide? I need to look at my thing. Damn, I don't have it in this presentation, which I'm not happy about. I don't know how that's separate, but nitric oxide is released into your body from the release phase, which is going to help you relax and calm down. Now, your release phase is going to be your positive psychology basics, your nutrients of positive psychology, right? So you're going to be breath work, meditating, and you can do convergent or divergent meditation. So divergent meditation is kind of just, let's say it's going to be like still waters run deep. These two kinds of styles of meditation I learned from Mark Divine, who's a retired Navy SEAL commander. And if you look in his book, I have it back here, but in The Way of the SEAL, he goes through this process. Now, convergent, so divergent would say be like box breathing. You're going to focus on your breath. You'll focus on maybe one thing, right? Where are your hands? What are they touching? How do they feel, right? That's a convergent thing. You're focusing on one thing. Now, divergent is just like still water runs deep, right? Where you're really quick box breathing is what a lot of Navy SEALs do, and that's what I learned from Mark Divine, where you do a 4 count in, four hold, a 4-second hold, and then you're going to double. You're going to do an 8-second exhale. You can do a 4-second hold. I know some people actually do 4-4-4-4. So But when you double your exhale breath, you actually are triggering your parasympathetic system, your rest, repair, and recover aspect of your nervous system. So it's going to help you relax and de-stress. And he talks a lot about that more in the book, where you want to do quick, short breaths. So I know in one aspect of the book, he's talking about going into a mission, and when they're scanning the area for threats or whatever they're doing, they're going to have slower, deeper breathing. And the moment something triggers where something is off and they need to figure it out, he switches. So he goes from parasympathetic, chill, scan, look, calm, into faster, quick, shorter breaths to trigger his sympathetic, right? Like alert, focus, attention, important, danger, to really zone in on whatever target. So I think that's really cool, because you kind of learn this stuff and then you can use it in a more like civilian manner. And then I tell this to a lot of people that we have to learn how to use our nervous system and our brain for the way that it's wired, but in a different world. So now we're using our sympathetic nervous system for our career, goal setting, building relationships and having like a marriage, or a partner, a spouse, being a parent, for your hobbies, whatever you're trying to like reach. You're using hunter's mode to attack that goal and make progress. But we're also using our parasympathetic nervous system to rest, recover, repair, relax, and ultimately, I'm still trying to do more research on this and kind of find my own links and patterns from what people are researching. But it seems to me that our conscious thinking is connected to our sympathetic nervous system, right? Conscious thought, whereas our parasympathetic system is linked more to our subconscious thinking. And now that I'm talking about this, I wonder if there's actually anyone who's found that the default mode network of our brain is linked to our parasympathetic nervous system, because it's kind of in that more like just default, daydreaming kind of state. And which is really interesting, because I know Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about this, how we're like, our bodies are records of the past, that we have to learn how to work through the emotions, and the record of the past is just playing over and over again. And a lot of times we're not even aware, like we just think, we have this freedom, we have this like ability to just do whatever we want, but because of our lives, the world that we live in, and our past experiences, we're actually a lot of times reliving patterns, and it's just a record playing over and over again. So kind of stepping out of that through, like, let's say, I know Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about meditation and being able to step out of yourself and reflect on yourself and change different patterns in your life to make progress. But I'm going back to stage 2 of flow. That's going to be your positive psychology aspect, right? So once you go from stage 1, frustration and struggle, and have all that cortisol and norepinephrine, you can take a walk, you can do breath work, you can journal, you can play an instrument. You don't want to have any input stimulation in your release phase, because that's going to knock you out of this whole flow cycle. So to get that nitric oxide released into your body and help you relax, you really want to, like, no TV, no electronics, no phone, no visual stimulation. You really want to maybe like hit the sauna, go for a walk. You can do light exercise. I wouldn't really advise a hardcore workout. It'll knock you out of this cycle, and you'll have to start all over again, which sucks, because if you're maximizing your frustration and struggle in stage 1 just to get into flow and knocking yourself out, you're going to have to go back for another 30 minutes or however long just to frustrate yourself again and start the cycle again. So stage 2 is really cool, because all that nitric oxide is released. And then you can do the MacGyver method as well, which is this is a really interesting method I learned from the guy that he wrote the MacGyver series. And why I say the parasympathetic nervous system, I believe, is linked to subconscious thought, is because we don't get our most creative, innovative thoughts during, like, I'm trying to figure this out. We get them when we're, at the beach in the sun. We get them when we're relaxing. We get them when we're just chilling out and not really trying to solve the problem. And here's why: because your brain, it is a pattern recognizing system. So when you're relaxing, you're giving your brain the time to consolidate every single thing you've ever learned, and your subconscious is in the background putting things together. And that's why if you look at history, like Albert Einstein, tons of musicians, artists, creatives in general, which is an easy one, you can see through their stories that they were maybe just sitting under a tree and they had this idea. They weren't really trying to write a song, but then the song came out of nowhere, a happy accident, because they weren't trying. Their brain consolidated all of their information, every experience they've ever had in their life, and it linked things together. So you can have, like, let's say, like, you're learning music, so everything you learned in music would be a vertical line in music, but you also have horizontal learning and pattern recognition where you are letting your brain link music to business, to like maybe like marketing and finance, and maybe like nutrition and personal development, public speaking, and linking it with like automotive skills you've learned. And for whatever reason, the brain really fucking loves that shit. So that's why I had a post yesterday about broad learning, because you're doing the convergent stuff or the divergent learning, and then you're slowly working down. So like, excuse me, if you look at, let's say, like the 10,000 hour rule, like, first off, the 10,000 hour rule is a myth. It's been debunked. It's a cool number, but it's arbitrary because that number was essentially based off a study that they did off 20-year-old violinists. So if you were to take those 20-year-old violinists and do the study up until they were 18, that 10,000 hour rule will be completely different. On top of that, flow turbocharges learning and skill acquisition by, I'm going to go actually to this number because I'm going to read these off to you from Harvard, Deloitte, and I think it's Stanford University. And these are, I wanted to actually have this visual up here, but McKinsey and Company. So McKinsey found a 500% increase in productivity by executives who regularly accessed flow states. Harvard found subjects to have 3 days of heightened creativity after the flow state. That means Harvard found that even after you've been in flow, 3 days after that, you still have a heightened creativity after you're even in flow. I think that's really important for people to understand. DARPA, they work with the military. They do a lot of advanced brain monitoring, and DARPA found that subjects to have a 490% increase in skill acquisition. 500% increase in skill acquisition, and they did this with the military, and they took beginner and intermediate marksmen, and they put them into flow. They had the training, and they found a 490% increase in skill acquisition. Now, the University of Sydney found subjects to have a 430% increase in creative problem solving in flow. So I kind of want people to really understand, like, this is not like, oh, this is really cool. Like, this is like completely dominating everybody in your job, in your industry, like whoever's near you, however you use flow into your life based off your passions, curiosities, and interests is really a big game changer. It's going to make a big difference. And I want people to really understand that, because, I mean, these numbers are pretty wild. And I remember when I got into Zero Danger, somebody asked, hey, there's a 500% increase in productivity, like these numbers. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. No, whatever. The director of success was on that call, and she was talking about, this is what we found, that 95% of our students that finish this program report an extra 5 hours on a day. So I was like, okay, whatever. This is like week 1 for me. I'm like, yeah, whatever. 5 weeks in, I was getting everything done. I was a machine, and I had literally 5 to 6 hours every single day of extra time, and I was Like, I don't know what to do with this extra time because I'm doing all my work, doing research, going to the gym, meal prepping, doing my walks. I'm doing like everything I could fucking do, and I have an extra 5 hours a day. I don't know what to do. And that was a big turning point for me to understand that these numbers are actually true. They're real and they matter. They're important. And in today's world, we all need to have an edge. I think, there's like a battle between like being average and being excellent. And I know Jordan Peterson talks about the war on excellence. And there kind of seems like there is a war on excellence and mastery. So kind of want everybody to understand the importance of flow. But getting back to stage 2 in the release cycle, you really want to have your positive psychology basics in there, and even more so. I'm gonna mute this really quick. So even more so, stage 2 is huge, very big, widely based on your positive psychology basics. Your sleep has to be on point. A lot of people are really interested in flow and like they want more flow, but you're not even sleeping. Like, if you're not even sleeping 7-8 hours, well, there's no reason for us to even have this conversation of like the flow cycle education and how you can get more flow. It's just not, right? You're going into a heightened state of energy for your brain. Your brain is not going to want to go there. It's not going to want to cooperate you. Your body, your physiology is just not going to want to go there, and you're going to get locked out, especially to certain tasks, right? So sleep, nutrition, hydration, gratitude, respiration, exercise, nature, all of these are the foundation of our lives, on top of, even more so, the PERMA model, right? Positive emotion, engagement, which is flow, relationships, social connectedness, friendships, your partner, love, professional, personal relationships. Then you have meaning, the meaning of your life, and then also achievements and goals, right? And then the plus in the PERMA model, the PERMA plus, the plus is the nutrition, the sleep, the hydration, right? All those things are important. But if you look at the PERMA model, you can see like positive emotions, like reflecting, journaling, right? Gratitude, meditation, right? Engagement, that's flow. Like, how engaged are you in the things and the people in your life? Relationships, your friends, your spouse, your partner, your relationships of all kinds. The meaning, like, what does your life mean to you? I think a lot of people are like, what's the meaning of the life of life? Well, that's defined by every single person in different ways, and what they value, what they're after, what excites them, what triggers their biology, their physiology to be excited. And it's so different for everybody. So that's amazing that we all get to define our individual meaning of life instead of, oh, well, this is the meaning and here it is. That's just not how it works. And then achievement, obviously, is like your goals, your accomplishments, what have you done, and what are you doing, learning, growing. So when you look at positive psychology and the PERMA Plus model, it encompasses everything that we need as humans to thrive and live a meaningful life, full of love, joy, and authenticity while we progress and we learn through the journey of life. But from stage 2, then you go into flow. Stage 3, now you're getting the dopamine, the endorphins, and the anandamide, which is, in Sanskrit, ananda means joy, bliss. So anandamide is bliss, right? And funny enough, the runner's high, people are like, oh, it's adrenaline. It's not adrenaline. It's actually, they found anandamide in the brain, and that's causing that euphoric sensation, which is cool. From my understanding, it's a neurotransmitter, and it's like a lipid. It's hydrophobic, something like that, and it helps modulate, which I'm still trying to research this and learn about it. It's like super intense, so that's all I'm gonna leave it at. But now, being in flow, like I said earlier, you're just executing, you're just doing, you're not thinking. So when you're in stage 2, you want to take that time to relax, but you also want to have preset, clear goals that you want to do at night, the night before, because you can't you can't think about what you need to do while you're in the moment doing it. So this is like the next level of productivity and focus and flow is you want to really prioritize things, let's say at night, and have a moment to understand what you really need to do and have very clear and specific goals. A lot of people, like, goal setting is not like, oh, I just want to, lose 20 pounds, Okay, but like what are the clear goals, right? Because the clear goals would be, at 5 o'clock, do my 1 hour workout every day, 5-6 days a week, whatever you're programming, whatever, right? If you're writing a book, it's not your clear goal would not be, spend an hour writing every day. That's not a clear goal. The clear goal is spend 1 hour a day reading 3 articles and writing 500 words of each article and put that into my Word document in 1 hour, right? Now it's very clear and specific. Okay, I need to read 3 articles. Maybe even more specific and more clear is what are the articles on, right? Because now you're not searching for articles in your 1 hour, right? So you're using your prefrontal cortex in advance to plan things out and do what it needs to do. And then it's going to shut down later while you're in flow and you already know what to do because you have your clear goals list, right? And then you also want to learn peak exits, which are where you learn how to exit flow at the height of excitement. This took me a while to learn because if you burn yourself out and you lose excitement during an activity or a task or whatever you're doing, your brain is going to start associating that task with boredom, burnout, a lack of excitement. So this could be something that you love, and I've done this with drums a bajillion times. I did it last week, because I practiced so much. So I know Oscar Wilde did this, and he would stop writing in the middle of the sentence when he was extremely excited. And he did this because he knew when he came back, he would be excited to work. So I think that's really important for all of us to understand that we want to leave at the peak of excitement so that when we come back to that task, we're excited. Our brains are happy. Our physiology wants to do this. Instead of, okay, here we go again. This is something I love to do, but I don't want to do this shit. This is bullshit. I'm just bored, right? And that's a lot of times, sometimes I'm practicing while I'm feeling that. I'm like, I don't want to do this bullshit, but I know the bullshit that I'm practicing is what's going to get me way better, instead of oh, well, I'm just going to play to a song and have fun because that's fun. And that's why, you look at a lot of musicians and you're like, well, there are certain skills that they might not have, and that's because, let's say, for drumming, they're not doing the practice they need to, and that really shows. 15 minutes of insanely on point, intentional practice is always going to be the guy that does 1 hour of practice every single day, but he's just playing songs. Right, which is great. That's important too, but it's not where you build your technique, your feel, and your internal clock, and your coordination, and all the things that happen with drumming. Right, there's so much more that you need to practice that isn't fun, but when you get good at it, it's fun. So when you leave, you do your peak exit from flow. Now you can go into your recover phase, which is basically your recover phase: positive psychology, rest, recover, repair, chill, no input stimulation, no communicating. You just don't want to have your brain processing information. If you're talking to people and you're listening to people, your brain is processing the language. Doesn't matter, we all speak. At the end of the day, our brain is still having to process that information. The thing is that we've listened to speech and language and music for all of our lives, that we think, oh, it's not, I'm not really taxing my brain. But you have to understand that any input stimulation, let's say you're hearing audio or a conversation, or you're visually looking at, let's say you're watching YouTube. Okay, well, now YouTube has audio and video. Your brain is processing, the occipital lobe in the back of your brain is processing the visuals, and your brain is also processing the audio, which is taxing your brain of energy. So whenever you're in your release phase, you don't want to input anything. You want to rest, relax, recover, because it's a sprint. So once you get out of flow and you recover, you're getting the serotonin and the oxytocin. So essentially the flow cycle is cortisol, norepinephrine, stress, alert, focus, attention, important, urgent, dangerous, right? And now you're going to go into the nitric oxide of the release phase, which now the nitric oxide is going to flush all the stress hormones out of your body, out of your brain, and you're going to go into flow. Your body is going to release dopamine, norepinephrine, dopamine, anandamide, and endorphins in flow, right? And then you're going to go into your recover phase, which is where you're going to get the serotonin and oxytocin, right? Now, if you look at, I forgot his name. He's a professor at Harvard, and he found that the flow cycle flushes your nervous system, your body, of all of the stress hormones. So this is why flow is the source code of our lives. We are hardwired to seek out flow, and this is why we like challenge, but not so much challenge that we break. That's why the challenge skills ratio is one of the most important flow triggers. And I didn't get into the flow triggers, but challenge skills ratio is a very important flow trigger. Immediate feedback, right? Important. You need to know, is this good? Is this bad? Am I doing this right? Is this not okay? And you need to know immediately. That way you can navigate, right? That's why music is an easy one, because this doesn't feel right. This isn't right. How do I change that? And you can go off a feel and you can change it immediately. And you're getting that immediate feedback to make changes in the moment, right? Risk, novelty. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but your brain will release dopamine from action, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, well, I want to get my hit of dopamine. If you listen to Andrew Huberman, who is a neuroscientist, a very well-established neuroscientist at Stanford University, he's got some amazing stuff, and he was talking about this a couple months ago, where you don't get a hit of dopamine, right? It's not just like, oh, a little drip. No, you have volumetric dopamine levels and you have synaptic dopamine, right? So volumetric is like the volume of dopamine in your system at that particular time, which from how I interpreted it is more of like your baseline dopamine level, right? So maybe you're at like 30, I don't know, probably like 30 micrograms, 30 UG or whatever of dopamine in your system is like the normal baseline for you. But now if you go kayaking and then you jump in the really cold spring water, your dopamine levels jump through the roof, because you're in nature, you've got the risk, you've got the novelty. There could be something in the water, you don't know, right? The novelty of jumping in the water, the physiological feeling of jumping in the water, what it's doing, it's triggering your physiology and your nervous system, right? So that is going to boost, but you're also going to get that synaptic dopamine, which is in the synapses of your neurons, right? So anyways, risk, novelty, challenge skills ratio, immediate feedback. There's 22 flow triggers that we know of. So I won't go into all of them, but those are some really important ones. And that's why surgeons continuously get better at their jobs compared to like just a standard practice like pediatrics doctor or physician, right? Because they're kind of doing the pediatric physician, maybe they're kind of, they're doing the same thing. It's a routine. It's it's boring. There's no risk. There's really no novelty. There might be a little bit of novelty in like, the different patients, but if they only specialize in kids that are like 3 to 5 years old, well, every problem might be generally the same. So it's a big conveyor belt of like medical practice, whereas like if you go to like a heart surgeon, like people can die on that. People can and will die on that table. So there's no time for mistakes, right? So you have in the surgery room, you have so many flow triggers. You have risk, you have novelty, right? You have immediate feedback. you have the cooperation of your team, right? Because now you have group flow. I haven't even talked about group flow and how group flow and using flow in a group setting, like a band, a company, your team at work. Maybe you're in a corporate environment, maybe you're on the board of directors, whatever it is. When you're working with other people, there's a way to use group flow to enhance the process and take things further, faster, in record time, and all thrive together, right? And all those flow triggers, like look at stand-up comedians. I know that was one that they talked about. Stand-up comedians and jazz musicians, they've done research on jazz musicians and group flow, and it's really interesting. I haven't really studied the group flow aspect of flow as much, which is definitely something I need to jump into, but I really want everybody to understand how important it is to not just have individual flow in your life so that you can maximize productivity in less time, literally by 10 times, which is you're getting 5 extra hours a day. Like if you do your flow blocks properly, like it's super insane. But the flow triggers are important. Something that I actually accidentally did, and I found out when I started learning and researching and getting taught all this, is flow triggers. Now, I have some flow triggers in my life. They're actually not flow triggers. They're external triggers. So if you look at Pavlov's dog, he conditioned the dog to hear the bell and salivate. Now, how is that? Well, he conditioned the dog to know, oh, every time I hear the bell, I'm going to be fed. So the dog would hear the bell, and after conditioning, he would salivate. Now, that means that we can condition our brains for certain emotions and experience and states of consciousness. So if you want to, maybe you want to be more productive at work and you want to have more flow, right? Well, hold on 2 seconds here. If you want to have that productivity and increase the flow, you can have an external trigger. So let's say you want to have caffeine as your trigger, which is one of my triggers. Okay, you're going to pick your trigger. Maybe it's lighting a candle, maybe it's lighting incense, and you want to have more than one. This is the cool part, because you can trigger yourself for different activities and places and being with different people or whatever. So let's say you want to have caffeine. You want to have an energy drink every time to excite you. Okay, so now you're going to have your energy drink every time you go to do something that you just super enjoy, that you really, really, really love, right? You're going to do that for about a month, as long as possible. Now you're conditioning your brain to say, okay, every time I have this energy drink, or every time I light this candle, or every time I sit in this spot and listen to this song, I've now conditioned my brain to understand that what I'm doing next is something that I really want to do, voluntary, which I went over before, and it's going to bring that excitement, and you're going to get excited. So now that you conditioned the trigger, the external trigger, now you can say, okay, I'm going to have my energy drink, and now I'm going to go and do a work task, right? And then what you want to do is to really solidify this. You're going to then go after the work task. Maybe you do a 90-minute block. You really want to do your flow blocks in 90-minute sprints of intervals. You do not want to just 10 hours of straight consistent work and burn the fuck out. Like, worst thing you could do, your brain is going to fight you consistently, and you're conditioning your brain in ways that you don't want to. So a flow trigger, you're going to go to work task, maybe do a 90-minute like flow block, super hardcore, intense, no distractions, no bullshit. And then you're going to do that activity you love. So maybe you're going to go rollerblading. Maybe you're going to practice the drums. Whatever it is you want to do, you're going to do that task. And now you're sandwiching, right? Because you did the flow trigger, you did your external trigger, your work task, and now you did a very enjoyable task. And if you want to sandwich it more, you can do another enjoyable task, and then you can go back into another flow block, right? And then even more so is this falls into the flow cycle. So your external trigger can be, let's say, in stage 1 of flow, where you're getting that stress trouble, frustration, cortisol, norepinephrine, alert, focus, attention, and then your little recover time, right? The release phase can be when you're doing that fun, amazing task that you love to solidify the external trigger, and then you can go into your flow cycle, right? Which could be another task that you love. And after you do that flow cycle, maybe you do your work task again in the flow cycle, and then in the flow stage, and then after your flow stage, you go into another, like maybe you do sauna, you go for a walk in nature, right? And you just relax and you recover, and you're really solidifying that external trigger. So at the end of the day, though, I kind of want to like end it with this: is that if your sleep's off, 7-8 hours mandatory. Peak performance, like you can't make up it, as far as the brain is concerned. You cannot make up for a lack of sleep by taking a nap. So yeah, you won't be tired, but when they've looked at the brain and like the brain imaging of a fMRI and all that, you cannot make up. So if you sleep 6 hours and then you take a 2-hour nap in the middle of the day, you're not actually making up for those 2 hours. Now, you are getting sleep and you are getting the rest, but you didn't get the full sleep cycle. Maybe your REM sleep wasn't on point. There's certain stages in your life, in your sleep, that are important, and you just can't skip on those. So when you look at positive psychology and peak performance, flow, productivity, becoming like superhuman, becoming the best version that you can ever be, sleep is non-negotiable. So I know there's idiots out there like Steve Harvey that's like, oh, rich people don't sleep. You're an idiot, and the fact that you would even fucking teach this to people is like, it's fucking mind-blowing. And it's funny because I was talking to Dr. Menino, who is the chief researcher at the Flow Research Collective. We were kind of laughing about this because he's like, has anybody heard of Steve Harvey? And I was like, dude, please do not get me on this guy. Like, I cannot believe he's saying that to people, because they've shown there's tons of studies on what lack of sleep does under like 6 hours, 6.5 hours. It's not good. I know I did a post a couple months ago of the Nature. They posted something on sleep, and they had like all the fMRI and the imaging of the brain and what it does to you. Not good. Your brain is consolidating information. It's wiping itself. It's like what's the word? It's defragmenting all your experiences, your knowledge. It's pattern intersecting. So it's in sleep. It's linking music with business, and then linking that with like nutrition and like landscaping, whatever things you've learned that are horizontal. Your brain is going to link every single aspect of your life experiences, emotions, and information that you've ever fed it. And that stuff gets wired into your nervous system, and then your brain, while you're sleeping, puts that all together. So I want to leave this here because I've talked a lot about a lot of things about flow, but at the end of the day, positive psychology, your sleep, nutrition, hydration, positive emotions, engagement, which is flow, relationships, meaning, achievements, being in nature, breath work, respiration, gratitude. Those things are literally the foundations of well-being and living a meaningful and amazing life, especially in today's world of like stress, go. The hardest thing I've learned in the process of living a high flow lifestyle is that it's a very grit skill to schedule relaxing time. And that's what athletes are doing, corporate athletes, right? Professional athletes. The people who are going further faster, they're very gritty about recovering. And it's not easy. I know for me, like, oh, I'm going to go to the sauna and sit and do nothing for an hour. Oh, I'm going to go get my sleep. Oh, I'm going to go for a walk for an hour in the sun, right? Like, you're like, oh, I could be working. I'm not really where I want to be, so I could be working, but you're not letting your brain do the things it's designed to do, right? In the ways it's designed to do it. So that being said, I'm gonna leave it here. I really want to just mention again, so everybody understands that positive psychology is like non-negotiable. That is how you're going to take things to the next level. And if you look at like people you look up to, maybe they're artists, musicians, or executives, business people, whoever they are, entrepreneurs. If you look at their stories, you're going to see a pattern that they had these aha moments, and these aha moments were never when they were in the thick of like work. They were always on vacation. They took a 6-month sabbatical. I know Matthew McConaughey, like him or not, I know he has a story where he went to, I think, like Africa, and he wasn't taking jobs. He was like, no, these aren't the roles that I want anymore. I want a serious role, right? And he went on the sabbatical, and he went to another country, stayed with another culture, and learned different things, saw a new perspective, and his brain put things together, and more opportunities came. So it's really interesting to see that pattern of your aha moments, your best ideas and creative moments. They're never going to come when you're using your logical conscious brain, because you figure conscious thinking is about 2,000 to 6,000 bits of information, whereas subconscious thought is about 76,000. So when you're in flow, you're using subconscious power, right? So your bandwidth is like from here to like as big as this house, right? So you went from here to like 4 miles of bandwidth. So really interesting stuff. I'm going to leave it at that because I went over a lot of information. So if there was something in here that really stood out to you, I'd really like you guys to put that in the comments, because I really want to see what stood out to you, maybe something that you've learned, and something that you're going to take action on. Maybe you're going to start using the external trigger and conditioning a trigger, external trigger, so that when you write music or when you go to work or whatever it is, maybe you have an external for your spouse. So whenever you see your wife or your girlfriend, maybe you have something that you do that makes you alert and more present, so that when you're with that person, it's a more meaningful experience. So that being said, I'm going to get out of here. Would really love to hear your thoughts, comments, and anything, insights that you've had from this information. I really appreciate your time and attention and focus. And until next time, I'll see you guys later, and peace out.